All right, hi everybody. This is Tara Samuels. Happy St. Patrick's Day. I'm wearing my green. I'm Irish, if you can't tell. It's one of my favorite holidays. And I feel like it's kind of fun to host one of these open to work spotlights that has to do maybe with a little bit of luck, right? A little bit of like Irish
Mhm.
luck when it comes to job searching. And we have been doing several of these calls, in fact, to be a resource to anyone in the industry, even outside of the industry, who might just need some emotional support, some networking help, some advice, some tips and tricks. And so I'm really excited that Kelsey and I are back on hosting one of these again, and I'm excited to introduce our special guest. So this is the second expert we've had from Rose Associates. Our first one was Debbie Ray Peters, and now I'm excited to have Marissa Frudden on the call as well. She has I won't steal her thunder, but she has quite the resume in our industry. So it was natural for me to ask her to join this call because she's got a lot of expertise and really just different vantage points based on her history. And I also love the three words that she used to describe herself: energetic, sociable, and ambitious. So, without further ado, Marissa, will you kind of walk us through a little bit about you and your role? And welcome to the call.
Thank you, Tara. Very nice to meet everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here. And as Tara mentioned, I'm Marissa Frudden, and I am the manager of human resources, specifically for talent acquisition with Rose Associates, based here out of New York City. We have a huge portfolio here and a huge footprint throughout the tri state area. But my history in our industry actually began working at a property as a leasing agent. So I have been in many people's shoes and really feel that that has given me a great foundation to be able to be successful in my 10 years of talent acquisition experience. I was able to spearhead the growth of the Southeast region of my former company and really able to help them grow to be the second largest region of that company. And I was building the foundation from scratch with the talent acquisition platform there. And so I've had an opportunity to really see things from a different lens and help people not only find their careers, but make them long term and really support them in their career growth. And so after 10 years, I'm excited to share with you everything that I have learned over my course of being in talent acquisition. I picked my three words: energetic, sociable, and ambitious, because as we know, being in not only the real estate industry, but also in talent acquisition, I'm sure Tara and Kelsey can attest to it. We have to be very energetic and ready to talk to people at any time, any day, in any situation. But also, I picked ambitious because no matter what's going on, what curveballs are thrown, if there is a will, there is a way. And so I'm hoping that you'll be able to see that theme throughout today's presentation.
I love that. And I love that you started on site as well, because I think it makes you so relatable. Like you said, like you know exactly how candidates feel as they kind of go through the ranks and make transitions on site and maybe even to the corporate office where you are. So let's highlight Kelsey. So Kelsey, actually, my counterpart here, recently celebrated a promotion. She is like the lifeblood of this company. She is our VP of recruiting and has been with the company now, is it 9 or 10 years? I always want to like give you an
This
extra.
year will be 10. Yeah. So
Oh, okay.
I'm going on 10 years. Yeah.
A decade of experience, which is fantastic. She knows a thing or two about recruiting. And I recently just joined the company about 6 months ago. And I'm really excited to also take my industry experience and hopefully add some light to the conversation as well. We at MSB, just a quick highlight, we are so entrenched in multifamily. We're very involved in the industry. We're present at so many events. We've been in business over 20 years. And one of the things I love is that we are really more of a resource. And that's one of the things about our name that I absolutely love. We're very consultative, however you say it. And when it comes to all things recruiting, we generally work with folks who are kind of under the radar, might be happy where they are, but maybe missing a few things and maybe quietly looking for that next opportunity. And I'm here to help with our workplace solutions division, which is ironically all about retention. And I want to highlight who our partner is in that. So Dr. David Wyman, who's shown here, has been partnered with our founder, Brad Schwartz, for over 15 years. He's actually up in the Northeast as well, in the Philly area. And he has brought light to a lot of like staggering statistics that have increased and contributed to turnover, but these are things that really could be prevented. And really, his focus and my focus is helping companies really kind of figure out and iron out the onboarding process, leadership development, culture, and engagement. So most people don't know that MSB has this division. So think of us for all things recruiting and retention. But Kelsey, I failed to allow you to like properly introduce yourself. So let's go back. And you can kind of give a quick, other than being here almost 10 years, can you share a little bit more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Kelsey, obviously. I've been with MSB going on 10 years, as Tara already mentioned. My whole entire career has been in recruitment. I actually wanted to be a veterinarian. My degree is in biology. Surprise, I'm allergic to animals. So I kind of got thrown into this, started out staffing, then went to IT. I pretty much stalked Brad until they were ready to hire me because I knew this was a place that I wanted to be. I loved everything that I'd heard. The culture, property management really excited me. So until he was ready to hire, I just was like, hey, how's it going? You ready yet? How about now? One of those where it's just of the full belief that persistence, obviously in a really good way, professional way, pays off. So that's kind of my, I don't want to call it a platform, but like I am always constantly telling candidates, like, be persistent, have the conversations. Even if you're not sure, you never know. So I'm really excited to be here. I'm excited to speak with Marissa, Tara, and just honestly be an ear, be a shoulder, anything for anyone that's going through this, because it's not easy.
Not easy. Yeah, and thank you for saying that. Marissa, I think this is going to be fun because we're going to shake things up a little bit with some agree or disagree just statements that pertain to kind of your world in HR. And I want to throw a few your way and just see, you don't have to go into detail at all, just simply agree or disagree. You ready to kick it off?
Sounds great.
Okay, so agree or disagree, job titles matter more than job descriptions.
Disagree.
Agree or disagree, culture fit is overrated.
Disagree.
Um, you can usually tell within the first 5 minutes if a candidate is a good fit.
Agree.
Agree. Okay. Ghosting candidates is never acceptable.
Agree.
Agree. Yay. This one I think is a really hot topic. Everyone's talking about AI. AI will completely replace recruiters one day.
Disagree.
I disagree too. Kels, how about you on that one?
I wholeheartedly disagree. Emphatically, no.
Emphatic.
You still need
Uh,
people.
Right.
yes, we still need the human aspect. Agree or disagree, hiring managers should focus more on potential than experience.
Agree.
Agree. Okay, I love that you said that. Um, most candidates undersell themselves during an interview.
Disagree.
Agree. This one, I feel like, and Kelsey, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Resume should only be one page. Agree or disagree? No, okay, both disagree. Okay, there's
Disagree.
so much on that.
Yeah.
It also
Right.
shouldn't be a textbook, but 2 pages is okay.
Yes. I'm
Right.
like 2 to 3 is good. Beyond that, like we're stretching. We need to condense, but also 1 page. I mean, now if you're fresh out of college or 1 year of experience, sure. But if you've got 25 years of experience, you can't, no, can't fit it there.
Um, Marissa, how about personality can be more important than skill set?
Oh, that's a tough one. I'm actually right in the middle on that because I think that skill set is hugely important, but being able to interact with others and really work towards a common goal is hugely important as well. So that's why I'm right down the middle on that. I don't know how, Kelsey, you feel about that.
I'm right there with you. I think there's certain aspects where like skill sets are, like we need it. Sorry, there's a reason for it. And then there's times where we have situations where we can teach the skill sets. So personality fits right in. So I think that I'm right there with you. I'm 50-50 on it.
I had to throw you a curveball somewhere. Last one is, and this is something that I hear people talk about back and forth. Social media profiles can be as important as their resume.
Agree. I'll go with agree on that because while everyone has their private lives and are able to post whatever they want, at the end of the day, unfortunately, social media really can speak to who a person is and how they will present themselves in the workplace. And so I always say, if you wouldn't want your mom or your dad or your grandma to see it, don't post it.
I feel like grandma is the best one, right? Because like they have
Yeah.
cool kind of real like old-fashioned values, and if it
Yes.
really can't pass the grandparent radar, it's probably not good. Oops,
Yes.
as I knock over my water. Okay, so let's get into some questions. I'm going to kind of fast forward a little bit. And this is something that I think this is one of the reasons why I really wanted to have these calls is because of the emotional roller coaster and the emotional side that I don't think anyone really talks about it enough, in my opinion. Being a candidate and being a hiring manager, both ways, it can be a very exhausting process. It can be very emotional. It has to be a two-way street, but there is definitely rejection that is part of the process. And I think what is often not highlighted either is that you could extend an offer to a candidate and maybe they have rejected the offer and maybe you didn't see that coming. So I think there's two sides to it, but I would love to just understand from you, how do you recommend that candidates handle rejection and turn it into something positive?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a big one for me. Unfortunately, not everything's always going to pan out in the way that you hoped it would. So it's totally okay to go and ask your interviewer or interviewers for some feedback. Some interviewers will provide it, some of them won't. If you do get feedback, definitely take that and try to position yourself in a way that will set you up in a more positive light for a future interview. If you don't receive that feedback, I would recommend speaking with a trusted colleague or former colleague because you probably don't want your current job to know you're looking. So maybe a former colleague or a friend and role play and ask for their feedback. How did I sound? Is there anything that you think I can brush up on? Is there any other information that you think I should provide? Yes, rejection is tough, but like they say, you have to kiss a few frogs to find your prince. So if you were rejected, I always believe that you were rejected for a reason and your perfect fit will come.
I love the kiss the frog analogy. Kelsey, you've had to kind of go through this a lot with maybe not delivering the best news to a candidate. Is there
Mhm.
anything you want to add to what Marissa said on this topic?
Yeah, I mean, Marissa, I'm right there with you, right? Rejection it sucks. It's not easy. I don't like delivering it. People don't like receiving it. I always recommend, as you mentioned, kind of the role play, what could have I've done different, maybe sometimes delivering that feedback again is uncomfortable, but it's going to lead to them interviewing better and finding that right fit. But I also recommend like having that person that someone can call, right? Like, man, I got another rejection, unfortunately. Like, this is frustrating. Just somebody that can like be an ear and listen. And like, that's, I think, something that I have learned to become for people. I think it was really hard initially for me to be that person because I tend to take on other people's feelings, but I've learned that sometimes they just need to get something off their chest. They're frustrated, they're annoyed, they don't understand. But being an ear for somebody that is going through this process is, I feel like, very invaluable right now. But, I think just being open to receiving that feedback and trying to take it in and do better in your next interview. Now oftentimes we don't have anything. And that's honestly, I think the worst part is saying, I don't know. But I think just being a resource for somebody too is can be a lot, can be more than I think we recognize.
Yeah. And one thing that got me through my open to work period was the phrase rejection is redirection.
Mm, yeah.
That is something I always want to give credit to whoever came up with it because it was not me, but it has actually helped me in so many ways other than job searching too, like in
Yeah.
personal. It's kind of like that other what's for you won't pass you by. So having candidates understand that they weren't selected, don't take it so personally. Do what Marissa said, maybe just kind of hone in on those skills, practice, and then I love that you said ask for some feedback because you don't know unless you ask. Don't be afraid
Hmm.
to get that feedback. And you never know, like that person could maybe reapply with you in the future and maybe they are well suited because they've worked on those things.
Hmm.
Or no. So resumes. So we kind of touched on the whole like myth of okay, it only has to be one page. Not true. So 2 page, concise. But what are some of the things maybe Marissa you're seeing that could be helpful for candidates to really improve their resume? What mistakes are you seeing?
Oh, resumes are one of my favorite things to help people with. In fact, I help lots of graduating students spiff up their resumes and make them look great to present as they apply for new jobs. Uh, One of the biggest mistakes I will say that I see is people trying to condense too much information onto one page. You don't want it to be so squished on there that it just becomes overwhelming to read. You also don't want to have crazy colored fonts. And if you are not applying for a modeling agency, please don't put your picture on there. Um, that is one thing that we absolutely don't want to see, is a photo on there. We want to see your skills, and a lot of times the photo may overshadow that. One thing that I have noticed is that colleges and universities state that you should put your interests on the resume. And while that is probably a great idea for a recent graduate, I would say someone that's a little bit further into the workforce would not maybe want to do that and focus more on the skills that they're bringing. You also don't want to use jargon that you wouldn't use, or words or vocabulary that you wouldn't use in speaking. So yes, ChatGPT can write your resume, but if you do that, it may have some Merriam-Webster words on there that you would never say or use. And, they're going to ask you about it and you're going to have to go, oh my gosh, what does that word even mean? So better to write it in your own words.
So true. Kelsey, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah. I mean, if the photo, yeah, just no. I also think that you can overcomplicate a resume. You could put too much information. We don't need different boxes with different analytics, and let's just simplify it. You can put all the information in there that hiring managers will want and need to see, and not have your eyes darting all across the page.
Is there anything, Marissa, that like from a layout perspective that as you skim and, you receive hundreds of resumes in your role, is there any tips on, like, the format of, like, certain things you like to see at the top? Do you prefer, like, maybe a summary to be bulleted? Like, anything you wanna add there that could help people?
So I think summaries again can be great for a recent grad or someone that will be graduating because they may not have as much work experience. But I believe that summaries take up space on the page, and your bullet points for each job typically will outline what would be in your summary. If you do feel it necessary to put a summary, make a cover letter instead rather than putting it on the top of the resume. And I typically like to see, the job title, the dates on the right, and then the position title. I'm sorry, the company name right below the job title, and then bullet points. One of the other things that is huge, and a lot of people don't think about it, is to make sure that your resume is either fully in the past tense or fully in the present tense. You don't want to be flip-flopping back and forth between tenses because it can read very choppy, but it also can become a bit confusing, especially if maybe you're a candidate that's been working two jobs at the same time. So you wouldn't want those two jobs, one of them particularly to be in present tense and one to be in the past tense.
Mhm.
Good point. Um, I'm gonna throw one agree or disagree at you, even though we did them all. I just was thinking, but oh my God, I just lost it. Oh no, I got it. Okay, agree or disagree, cover letters are dead. Like do
Disagree.
people still use it? Okay, so disagree. Okay, so you
And
are seeing more and more, or like continue?
I do see them, and I would say it also depends on the job, right?
Okay,
For a standard, let's say leasing representative or a community manager job, you probably wouldn't need one. However, if you're applying for a job where special projects that you completed in college might really help boost your application, a cover letter could be beneficial. So I think it really is dependent on what that job is. And to that end, education. A lot of people think that they have to either put their GPA on there or the year they graduated. If you're a recent grad, you can certainly put it, but you don't have to. Once you have your degree, you can simply write the university that you attended and the degree that you obtained. You don't have to write your GPA. You don't have to write your graduation year unless the company is requiring it. There are some jobs in some companies that may require that, but I would say for the vast majority of jobs in the property management space and real estate space, they're not really that focused on things like GPA or dates of graduation.
so true. I love that. I think that was perfect. So we kind of talked a little bit about personality and the idea of being perfect and perfectionism can be crippling. And a lot of people get in their own head when it comes time to an interview because, you might think, like, because it is a very judgy situation, you are being evaluated. But how important is it to show your personality? And, like, what's the right balance between a little bit of personality, professional? What's that right mix for you?
So something that I used to suffer from myself was that I would be very, very stiff during an interview. And so you wouldn't get who is Marissa, right? Someone asks me, tell me about yourself. And I'd go, oh my gosh, what do I say? I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about personal things or professional things, or where do I draw the line? So I think that it's really important to have a nice mix between showing your personality but remaining professional throughout that time. So you don't want to start going off on a tangent or using verbiage that would not be office appropriate in your interview, but you also want to make sure that they can see who you are. Are you a good fit for not only this position, but for the company as a whole? You asked about company culture earlier or mentioned it. And that is a huge thing for people, is the company culture. And it's not just how the interviewers feel about you, it's how do you feel about the interviewers. You're going to get to see their personality as well as you go through that interview, and you want to make sure that you feel that this is a good fit on both ends. So showing a little bit of that personality and letting people see who the true you really is really important.
Yeah, so true. Kelsey, have you
Mhm.
anything you want to add, and especially as I know you do a lot of prepping of the candidates as they, gear up for interviews. Anything you want to add on that?
No, I mean, I'm right there with you, right? You should show your personality, but be able to like keep it professional. And I always talk about, if they ask about you, right? You can start off personal, but then like tie it into the professional. Like just make it a nice little segue. So I'm right there with you on that.
Marissa, how about what have you seen? There's so many virtual interviews. Just curious, like with backgrounds. If somebody has created maybe like a background that shows more of their personal side, is that something you see as trending? Is that distracting? Like, how do you feel like like obviously I have an MSB background, but if I had like my favorite sports team in an interview or my favorite quote or anything like that, is there anything just that people can learn from like your preferences and what you've seen?
I personally think a blank background or at least blurred is always best if you're not sure. If you have a background that maybe is part of an organization that would tie to the role that you're interviewing for. So maybe you're interviewing for a nonprofit and you volunteer with them and you have a background from that company. I think that's great. But if it's not related to the job, I would say it's probably best to leave it out. When in doubt, leave it out.
I love that. Or ask grandma.
Or ask grandma. That's a good one, right?
Um, so we kind of touched on personality, obviously, and there's the networking piece. I think a lot of people, as they prep for an interview, as they're doing their research, they might network with other folks. Like if they're trying to get a job at Rose Associates, they might be looking out on LinkedIn to see, oh, who do I know? Who knows who? Maybe I can build some of that rapport and personality before my scheduled interview. What's your best advice on making networking feel more natural and effective? And I should have put less like stalkerish too, because there's a little bit of a fine line, I feel like.
Mhm.
So networking can certainly be a little bit nerve-wracking, whether that be on a place like LinkedIn, or sometimes there are local networking events, some of which I have been to. And yes, when you walk in, it's very awkward. You're like, where do I go? Who do I talk to? Who do I say hello to? But one of the best things that I have found, just from my own experience, is number one on LinkedIn. If you have a connection in common, you can say, I see you know Billy. How do you know Billy? I would love to hear more about your opportunity or your position that you're working in at XYZ company. Um, if you're at a networking event like a live career fair, or maybe let's say a professionals networking event that is not a career fair, um, you may want to go with a friend or with someone that's in a similar industry, just so you have that wing person that you can feel more comfortable navigating that with. And I think that one of the best things that you can do is really say to the person who organized the event, I'm in this industry or I perform this job. Is there anyone you think I should meet? And sometimes they will actually make that match for you as well.
I love the little matchmaking
Mhm.
tie-in. That's so cute.
Yeah.
Kelsey, how about you? What do you have to add on that?
Yeah, I think honestly that's brilliant. I didn't even think of that. So that's added to my little
Stealing.
advice book, a la Marissa. Um, the one thing that I also recommend to people is, let's say they don't have a wingman or they don't have somebody that can go with them. there are other people that will be at this event who are feeling just as maybe awkward or uncomfortable as you. So find that you can tell the people that are there alone or don't have somebody with them, go up to them and say, "Hey, this is awkward. What are you? How are you? My name's so and so," and like strike up a conversation. And I have been that person that has been the one to approach someone, and I've also had somebody approach me, and like it is the best. No one's ever going to feel uncomfortable with that after you strike up that initial, "Hey." I highly recommend it. You'll meet the best people that way.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm actually going off script here. I'm curious because this is such like an old school approach, and I'm wondering if this has happened to you in the last couple of years, Marissa. Has anyone literally walked into your corporate office with a resume in hand, kind of ready to be interviewed on the spot to really showcase being different than everyone else who's just emailing and maybe just doing LinkedIn? Is that even a thing anymore?
Yes, there are some people that do drop off their resumes to our corporate office. However, I wouldn't say that we've typically interviewed anyone on the spot unless it was more of an open forum career fair. Uh, but I do think, when when you bring a piece of paper and you say, "Hi, I'm so and so, and I'm looking for a position as a leasing agent," that is a sales job. So you already are setting yourself apart from others.
Mhm.
And so I think anything that your skill and ability and really present that in a unique way, which it shouldn't be unique, right? But it kind of is today, a unique thing. People don't use paper. So I actually love when people drop off their resumes. I think that that is really something that says, I am interested, I am eager, and I will do what it takes.
I agree. And has anyone seen Legally Blonde where she had, I wouldn't recommend doing the pink paper with the perfume scented.
Maybe not.
But I'm with you on like the actual piece of paper. I think, to your point, especially if they're looking for something in sales, what a better way to showcase your sales ability than to really put yourself out there. As long as you're doing it in a professional, non-stalker way, and being respectful of people's time and business hours. But I love that. Did you have anything to add to that, Kels, before we go to the next question?
No, I
You were
think
good?
it's brilliant. I love it.
Okay. Um, okay, so I think sometimes we kind of talked about people getting in their own head, perfectionism, and I think sometimes you can look at a job description or the qualifications that are listed in a job posting and think like, oh gosh, I don't have every box checked. Maybe you're talking yourself out of applying. I know I have done that in the past, like early on, but sometimes there's ways to kind of address that. So curious for candidates that don't check every single box in a job description, how can they still position themselves to be a strong contender?
So, first and foremost, I wouldn't apply for jobs that are completely out of the realm of what you're looking to do or completely out of your wheelhouse that you don't have experience in. However, if you check some of the boxes, I would always encourage you to apply because it could be that they are hiring for more than one opening. It could be that they are open to hiring someone who starts in a more junior level and works their way up to that role. Or there could be a training ground on which they're able to put you, maybe a program that they have, or they match you up with someone more senior in the organization, and that way you can learn and grow. I think one of the biggest things when interviewing for a job where you may not check all the boxes is do your best to showcase what you have done that can relate to those jobs. So, or those duties. So let's say that you participated in a organization in your college or university. And some of the work that you did there can actually translate over to the work you'd be doing. Use specific examples and scenarios to really point out while I don't have actual on the job work experience, I did this with my club or my organization.
I love that.
Mhm.
That is a really good idea. Kelsey, what about you? Anything to add?
Very similar, right? Just you might not have the direct experience, but highlight past or previous experience that could tie in and relate is exactly what I recommend.
And I think too, like if those, like let's say there's 10 boxes and you check maybe 7 of them, I think there's something to be said about being vulnerable to say like, while I don't know these 3 things, I'm willing to learn, I'm coachable, like really kind of maybe making that hiring manager know that, oh, Sally is willing. So she doesn't maybe know this accounting piece, but she's willing to learn. I think that speaks volumes too, is adding that extra piece of, but I'm willing to learn and I'm coachable.
Absolutely. That was another piece that I was going to share. So that was a great segue. Coming up with a game plan,
Yeah.
and actually presenting it and saying, I don't have experience here, but here's my 30, 60, 90-day plan to learn it. Or maybe there's a class you can take or a licensure that you can obtain that would better help you in that role. And you can say, for example, that maybe you're actively pursuing it. And that could, give you a leg up in being considered for that role.
I love that. I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
No, that was great. That was a great segue. I loved it.
Um, so there are so many. I just got back from a couple of industry events last week. Culture is has become a buzzword, and it's something that's like kind of like during COVID it meant one thing. After COVID, I almost think culture goes in stages. It's very subjective. I don't think it's always about the free snacks and the ping pong tables that it used to be. Culture, I think a lot is, one session talked about how it's not always about the money, it's about recognition and knowing like your team's love language and how they like to receive feedback and small moments, things like that. So I think culture can be, it's such, that one word can mean so many things, right?
Absolutely.
It is a two-way street. So I'm just wondering how candidates can make sure they're finding a company that aligns with their own goals and values.
Absolutely. So you're 100% on the money when you say culture is a huge thing. I would say on 9 out of 10 interviews that I conduct, everybody asks, what is the culture at Rose? And I share exactly how I perceive the culture to be at Rose. And fortunately, the way I perceive it tends to be the way others would describe it. But my recommendation is to ask if there's someone that you can speak with at the company that's already performing the job. Of course, you don't want to do this on interview number 1, but maybe you're on round 3. This is the final interview, and you really want to make sure that this is a great fit. Ask if there's someone that you can speak with. Ask if you can come spend a couple hours at the office and take a tour. You can also do research on the company. Of course, there's always going to be reviews online, but you can see if maybe they have what I'll call extracurriculars for the employees. So for example, Rose Associates has employee resource groups and we participate in giving back events. So oftentimes you can see pictures of those things on social media. So that's where social media actually becomes a really great tool in the job search. But you absolutely want to make sure that it's a place that you're going to feel really good about coming into work every day and that you're going to enjoy working with the people on your team and maybe on other teams, especially if you're working in a place where there's a lot of interdepartmental interaction. So obviously, if you know someone who's already working there, you can ask them firsthand. They've probably told you at some point, but you can ask them again. So I think that asking questions and doing the research and not not being afraid to insert yourself and saying, is there someone I can speak with, is invaluable.
Yeah, and I think so many of the companies are very transparent about the core values on the website. I love that they're, usually it tends to be like 4 things, I think is kind of like the theme, and just making sure that you don't square peg round hole it. So, like, if you
Mhm.
feel that you're like, originally you're like, "Oh, ABC management sounds like a great place to work," but if there's a couple things that are displayed that are cultural their culture, but you don't align with that, don't try to force yourself to align with something that maybe
Mhm.
just doesn't resonate with you. Kelsey, what else are you seeing? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I often call that the romanticizing the
Ugh,
idea of something, right? It don't part of an interview process is the candidate's also interviewing the company, right? Is this going to be a good fit for me? Are we going to clash as hire you're my hiring manager and I'm your employee? Is our personalities, are we aligned? So I am of the huge advocate for make sure that you know what you're looking for. Like, I think culture is so subjective, right? Marissa, as you mentioned, you explain it how you perceive it, which oftentimes is how others perceive for the culture to be. But, Tara and I could have very different perspectives on what is important to us. So maybe something that I find to be important, she might not, and that's okay. But knowing what's important to you and knowing the questions to ask to determine is this going to be a culture fit for me is, I think, number one before even going into an interview process for candidates to be prepared for. Of course, you need to prep for whatever questions are going to come your way and have that conversation, but be prepared. And it's okay to say this is just isn't for me, because the last thing you want to do is romanticize it and then get in there and then it's just not what you want it to be.
Yeah.
it's like when you're dating and then you're like, "Oh, I can change that trait about this person
Hmm.
when hopefully when we get married." No,
No.
Uh,
probably not. Um,
the other thing,
oh,
I'll just say one other piece of this. When you come out of your interview, think about how you feel. Do
Yes.
I feel good? Or do I feel like, maybe there's something not right here?
Yeah.
Because I always feel like when you go with your gut, it will never steer you wrong.
Hmm.
I think that's so true.
100%.
Depending on how long you've been on the job market, you can sometimes suppress that gut feeling out of desperation to like land that next opportunity. And ultimately that could be to your demise because you get into a company that ultimately didn't check all the boxes and then you regret it. You definitely don't want to have that. I want to ask too something a little off script as well on from your perspective, like in the first interview, when you're talking with candidates, is there something that's kind of taboo to ask in the first interview, whether it be like salary or PTO or anything culturally? Like, is there anything that you're like, probably would advise you not to bring that up on the first interview?
I would say that totally okay to ask about the pay. Usually, with pay transparency laws, a lot of the pay rates will be posted, but we will still ask the candidate how much they're looking for because they may hope that we're willing to pay above a pay range that's posted. And that's okay. It just may not be for that role, but maybe we have another role that aligns. So I think it's a good practice at the end. If it's, if the interviewer hasn't um, asked you how much you're looking for, you can say, is the pay range posted online still accurate?
Hmm.
I'm looking for XYZ. What I find is probably not the best thing to ask is usually about benefits. And while benefits are certainly important, I think that a hyper focus on benefits like PTO or do you have summer Fridays or something to that effect could rub somebody the wrong way. If you're interviewing with someone from HR, I think it's different than if you're interviewing with the hiring manager as well, because a lot of times there are different packages and different plans. And so it's always best to actually discuss those topics with someone that's on the HR team. Or if you're working with a company like MSB Resources, then you can ask your point of contact there to assist you with that information. The other thing is flexibility on working hours. If the company is outlining the working hours for you during the interview, you don't want to start asking if there is flexibility, because that can signal the interviewer to say, I don't think they're going to be able to fulfill this job as far as we require the hours worked to be. So maybe they're not going to be available 40 hours, or maybe they are available, but they're not available during the hours that our office is open. And how do we really work around that? So if you can refrain from those types of questions on the first round, I think it's best. Of course, as you get further down the line, you can have those discussions. Maybe there is one day a week where you need to adjust your hours, and the company would be completely okay with that. But you have to be transparent upfront about that. Or if you have pre-planned vacation, let the company know. Don't come in on day one and say, oh, by the way, I have to take off next Thursday through Tuesday because I'm going on vacation. Let them know ahead of time so they can plan accordingly.
Yeah, I think that's only fair. Full transparency for sure. Um, that's kind of the end of some of the questions, but I did have something else that came up that I'm curious about follow-up. So one of the things that I think, and Kelsey, I don't know how you like feel about this, but I always feel like you can be really great in getting the interview, maybe present yourself well during the interview process, but then you might fail at the follow-up piece and the thank you piece and what that looks like. Any advice on what you've seen that works well? And do you kind of agree that like you could have a stellar candidate, but if they kind of drop off on the follow-up, is that a red flag to
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, I do feel that thank you notes to some extent have fallen by the wayside, and I don't think that that's a good thing. I think it's very important, even if you don't want the job,
you?
you should always follow up, because you never know if you might come across that person in another interview at another company. So it's always best to follow up and say thank you, even if it's thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate everything. And after further consideration, I no longer want to proceed. That's okay. Be
Mhm.
honest, be upfront. If you loved the company and you want that job, thank you so much for your time. I'm really excited. This reinforced my excitement because XYZ, and I'm looking forward to working with you. When can I expect to hear about the next steps in the process?
Mhm.
And what is the timeline in which you're looking to make a decision? Because you may be interviewing for 5 different jobs at the same time. And you don't want to be stuck where you get an offer from one, but the company you're really hoping to get that offer from is sort of taking their time, or
Mhm.
not really sure of when they're going to make a decision. Um, you don't want to get stuck in a predicament where you don't know what to do. So it's always good to ask about timelines. I do think that while thank you notes don't always need to be sent. I think it's a nice thing to do, and it sets you apart as a candidate to say thank you, because so many people don't do it anymore. And if the hiring team is following up with you and you are being non-responsive, that automatically makes the company say, they're not responding. They're probably not interested. Maybe we should move on.
Mm. Yeah, assumptions can be made where maybe
Mhm.
they Kelsey, what do you have to add
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah, I think it's okay and encourage for somebody to say, when can I expect to hear from you? Or what are next steps, right? I think oftentimes when you don't, it's the unknown. or the silence that gets the brain going. And we want to do everything, I think, on both ends to minimize that. We want everyone feeling comfortable, excited, and very happy to be moving forward.
In closing, Marissa, I'd love to give you kind of any final last words, tips, or anything that maybe we didn't touch on that you'd love to kind of just add into this kind of resource for future candidates.
Sure. So biggest thing that I can recommend is don't give up. There is a job out there for everyone. I know it can be tough. I know it can be stressful. I know it can be emotional, and it can just feel like it will never, ever end. But I promise it will. Just be persistent, be ambitious, put your best foot forward, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
So true. Kelsey, how about you? Final
Yeah.
words?
Yeah, I think just have as many conversations as you can. Get out there and network. Even if it's something that you're unsure if this is going to be a fit for you, have that conversation. Because as Marissa already stated, you don't know what else is going on behind the scenes with that organization. They could be in the back of their mind thinking they need to hire for something else, or just talking with you could trigger something in their mind. So the more conversations that you can have, the more people you can meet with, the odds increase.
Mm-hmm. I will add to, and Marissa, I don't know if I told you this, I know Kelsey knows, but my dad was recently laid off after 20 years with the same company. And so he's grappling with like, whoa, this is new. This is, so he's going through like the stages of grief, right? Which
Mhm.
is the things that you kind of just have to identify. And I think one of the things that he's doing really well, and I don't know if he learned it. He was on one of our open to work calls, and so many people forget, do not make applying for jobs your full-time job. Make sure to balance health and wellness, maybe some professional development, working out, reading, LinkedIn learning, whatever that looks like. But if you just spend 8 hours a day applying for jobs and feeling and getting rejection notices, don't keep repeating that, because that's insanity, right? But it
Right?
also is defeating. So it's I always try to encourage people when I was open to work, finding that balance and continue to structure your calendar the way you would if you were at a 9 to 5. So I build in times to go take a walk, or to like walk the dog, work out, whatever that looks like, or maybe read 20 pages in a book. I think if you balance, it helps you stay refreshed for
Mhm.
the process, but it also helps your mental wellness as well. Again, which I don't think a lot of people talk about. It's tough out there. It's really
Absolutely.
tough out there. This has been a great conversation. I love that that everything that you've shared is, in my opinion, a timeless resource for people to use and refer to. We love adding pieces from our spotlight guests into our newsletter. Excuse me. And I know Kelsey and her team use these recordings as well to help prep candidates. So this is invaluable information. I really appreciate your time today. And you have to
Thank
tell Debbie
you.
Rich that hi. And the team at Rose Associates has been so kind to MSB. We appreciate it. And I think that's it, unless anyone has anything else.
For
Okay.
me, thank you so much. This was great.
Yeah. Yeah, this is awesome.